There are multiple organs in the respiratory system, and the nose will be the starting point. The nose provides protection. It functions to warm, cleanse, and humidify the air. It also detects odors and amplifies the voice by acting as a resonance chamber. Air will move through the nostrils and into the nasal cavity, where it's lined with mucous membranes. Here, it will come into contact with a series of ridges containing the nasal conchae. There is a superior, middle, and inferior nasal conchae that will help warm incoming air, and each conchae is separated by a nasal meatus. There are also 3 nasal meatus, superior, middle, and inferior, and these are passageways for air. These 2 structures help move the air around the nasal cavity, and then it will move into the pharynx. The pharynx is also known as the throat and follows the nasal cavity. The pharynx functions in carrying air between the nasal cavity and the larynx, and it also contains tonsils that function in immunity to provide protection. The pharynx has 3 portions: the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. The nasopharynx is similar to the nasal cavity, and it is a passageway for air, since it is lined with ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium. The next portion would be the oropharynx, which is also a passageway for air, but since it is lined with stratified squamous epithelium, which is thicker and can handle abrasion, it also acts as a passageway for food. The last portion would be the laryngopharynx, which is similar to the oropharynx and acts as a passageway for air and food. The larynx, also known as the voice box, follows the pharynx. The larynx is lined with ciliated pseudostratified columnar epithelium. The larynx helps to carry air between the pharynx and trachea, and it also contains vocal cords that help with sound production, and vestibular folds help to prevent food from entering into the trachea. There are several cartilages that protect the vestibular folds, vocal cords, and glottis. The epiglottis is the uppermost portion and has elastic cartilage. This prevents food from entering into the glottis. The thyroid cartilage surrounds the vocal cords. It is the middle portion. It looks like a shield, and it's also known as the Adam's apple. This has hyaline cartilage. The cricoid cartilage also has hyaline cartilage and is the bottom portion, and this connects the larynx to the trachea. The trachea is also known as the windpipe, is a physical connection between the larynx and the bronchial tree. It is a rigid tube supported by C-shaped rings of hyaline cartilage. This helps air pass from the larynx into the lungs. The trachea will split into 2 at the distal end and become the right and left main bronchi. Bronchial tree has several structures, and it is a network of highly branched air tubes that will carry air in and out of the deep tissues of the lungs. There are 2 main bronchi, the right and the left, and each goes into a lung. Once the main bronchi split and go into each lobe of the lung, the branch is referred to as the lobar bronchi. The right lung will have 3 lobar bronchi, one for the superior, middle, and inferior lobes, and then the left lung will have 2 lobar bronchi for the superior and inferior lobes. And then once they're in the lobe, each lobar bronchi will branch off a number of times, and then these will be called the segmental bronchi. These 3 bronchi structures are supported by hyaline cartilage. So the bronchial tree will split even further, and the bronchioles are continuations of the segmental bronchi, and at this point they lose the supportive cartilage and they transition from skeletal muscle to smooth muscle. The bronchioles will keep branching off, and these are called the terminal bronchioles. These are pretty much the last branches of air ducts that act only as an air passageway. The terminal bronchioles will branch off again into the respiratory bronchioles, and this will lead to the alveolar ducts and the alveoli. The alveoli are microscopic air sacs found on the respiratory bronchioles and at the ends of the alveolar ducts. There are millions of alveoli in each lung, and this is the main site of gas exchange in the lungs. Alveoli are composed of 3 different types of alveolar cells: squamous, great, and alveolar macrophages. The squamous alveolar cells is crucial for gas exchange, and it forms the respiratory membrane along with the endothelium of the blood capillaries. The second type would be the great alveolar cells. These produce a fatty fluid called surfactant, and this prevents the alveoli from sticking to themselves, and it helps to re-expand during inhalation. The alveolar macrophages are also known as dust cells, and these are white blood cells that will help to clean dust and bacteria from the alveoli. The squamous alveolar cell, the endothelium of the blood capillaries, and the shared basement membrane will form the respiratory membrane, and this will allow for the gas diffusion to go back and forth between the alveoli and the blood capillary.